We have a very long agenda, and we've got 5 minutes to showtime, but would anybody object if we started now? I'm looking at Attorney LeBeau there, and if it's okay with the Vice Chair, it's okay with me. All right, let's get going. Just by way of a very brief introduction, the fair hearings in each of the boroughs are behind us now, and I certainly heard a lot of messages loud and clear, and there was one consistent theme, whether you were in the Bronx or Staten Island or Manhattan, anywhere, that people had a very high degree of dissatisfaction with some of the operations of paratransit, which is belied by the zooming statistics of people who are actually using it. So Howard asked Tom Charles to be available today to give us a presentation, and I ask that any board members, any committee members that are more interested in delving into issues behind paratransit, perhaps we could form a working group to look into some of these issues with Tom. But let's start with public speakers. Are there any?
No public speakers.
Great. Okay. Is there a motion on the minutes from January? All in favor? Minutes are adopted. Any changes to the committee work plan this month?
No changes.
Operations report, Howard.
Thank you, Chairperson Frasca. For most indicators, this month's report covers through December 2000, or covers the month of December 2008. As a result, the period covered by the 12-month moving average also coincides with the entire calendar year 2008. On the subways, for absolute on-time performance, results in December 2008 were 74.3% system-wide, 66.3% for the A division, and 79.8% for the B division. Controllable was 89.7% system-wide, 85.3% for the A division, and 92.5% for the B division. Next month, because we don't have the historicals for these, we're going to change the format slightly, and we're going to report the previous month and year-to-date as well as the current month. Of course, when we get to August, then we will, for the first time, have a complete year's data, and we'll revert to the former format. Results for subway weight assessment show improvement. Weight assessment was 88.1% December, up 2% from a year ago. The A division did very well, increasing by 6% for the month, while the B division was up slightly. For the year 2008, system weight assessment was 86.6%, an improvement of 0.8%. Both the A and B divisions improved year over year. As the committee has been informed, we will be reporting subway delays next month in a new format based on our conversion from telephonic reports to collation of the actual train register sheets. Instead of reporting only the top 10 causes, we will be reporting all delays under a set of summary headings. We will also report the current month, previous month, and year-to-date so that there will be some historic comparison. In December, mean distance between failure continued its 4-year slide. It was 121,264 miles for the month, down 9.6% from a year ago. For the year, mean distance between failure was 134,795, down 9.9% from 149,646 in 2007. Last month, I indicated we would be providing a more in-depth analysis of mean distance between failure by car class each month. The first of these was completed for the month of December, and the results were provided to you last week. In December, we continue to see a deterioration in performance by the 4 oldest car classes, which are being retired as new R160s are delivered. The analysis also highlighted some ongoing issues with other car classes. In some cases, such as the R46s, major SMS work is ongoing, and we expect performance to improve as a result. In other cases, we're conducting campaigns to address problem components. As projected by the analysis, the combination of these efforts and the continuing delivery of R160s to replace cars over 40 years old is expected to turn the mean distance between failure curve upward during 2009. On the bus side, overall bus performance continues to be strong. 2008 weekday pullout performance was 99.8% in the AM and 99.9% in the PM. Both statistics were up slightly from 2007 and remain quite high on an absolute basis. Bus mean distance between failure was 4,000 miles in December, a decrease of 6.4% from 4,276 a year ago. For the year, mean distance between failure fell to 3,933 miles, a drop of 4.3%. The aging of the fleet was the main reason for these results, and we expect reliability to improve as new buses are delivered over the course of 2009. Paratransit, for the year, paratransit service continued to grow at a rapid pace throughout 2008, as completed trips were up 22.6% for the year. When I first looked at the data for December, I almost had a heart attack, but people quickly explained to me that we had a strike at 4 paratransit carriers in December 2007, and so the 35% increase represents below normal service levels during December 2007, not a shift to a new paradigm. For the year, customer no-shows were 4.2% of scheduled trips in 2008, up by 5% from 2007. At this time, I would like to introduce Tom Charles, VP for Paratransit, who will present a brief update on the paratransit program.
Thank you, Howard. Good morning. Given the importance and the nature of the complaints you heard at the hearings, we thought we would summarize the challenges facing paratransit service and some of the actions we had taken and some of the actions we intend to take to improve the service. Next slide, Mike. We have rapid and steep growth in demand while trying to maintain the costs. We're addressing this demand because we have a zero denial rate to be maintained as per federal guidelines. And as you're marshaling your resources to meet that demand, you want to maintain and improve the customer service. Next slide, please. In 1993, when the city took over the Access-a-Ride program, there were 92 vehicles. At present, we have 2,042 vehicles in service. In 1994, there were 25,000 registrants with 424,000 completed trips. At the end of 2008, registrants quintupled, and our annual trips there was a 14-fold increase at 5.8 million. Growth in completed trips between 2007 and 2008 alone was more than 22%. Next slide, please. Most of the forecasts were hoping there would be a saturation point with this service, but with the aging of America doubling in the next decade, we don't see this abating. We see a continuing trend. Next slide. Our registrants, some of the profiles, 49% are over the age of 75 years of age. Longevity is certainly a factor. We see this in the census reports. 17% use a wheelchair. 65% have an annual household income under $35,000. Some of our disabilities are neuromuscular, cardiovascular, high percentages in both. Next slide, please. Usage is also, not only are we seeing new registrants, but they're using the service much more each year they're on the service. We were up from 30.7 to 44.6. More registrants are taking frequent trips, 6 monthly trips up from 13 to 22%. And our interborough, our longer trips, the most problematic, are increasing from 31 to 39%. Next slide, please. Right now, our vehicles in service, we've introduced sedans in 2006. We see a projection to meet this demand, combination of trying to mix the fleet between sedans for ambulatory and wheelchair lift equipped for vans. Next slide. Of course, the costs, as I said, have increased. We have been projecting our costs with the fare proposal This represents a 10.4% increase in the next 2 years. Next slide. Sure. Includes the assumption about the fare increase. Yes, reduction in demand. I think that was, I'm not sure.
I think the reduction in demand is worth about $25 million in expense.
9% reduction in
Yeah.
trips. Next slide. Although our boardings have, as we said, have increased, the cost per passenger has only increased by less than 0.25%. This is the cost certainty with the contracts, long-term contracts. This is, as you can see, a significant increase in boardings as compared to the cost per boarding. Next slide. Some of the cost reduction initiatives we had undertaken: we centralized our accident and property damage insurance coverage under the MTA risk program for pre- and post-loss activities. We extended the New York City tax exemption for bulk delivery of fuels to our carriers. We purchase, I'm sorry, okay.
How does that actually be? How does that cost reduction?
The taxes would be something we would have to reimburse the carriers for to operate our vehicles. So it was only confined, the tax exemption, to the state agency. We were able to get it extended to the carriers.
How much does that save?
I'll have to get you that figure. There's a significant savings over the years.
Helpful to get an understanding of how much each one of these actually is.
Sure. Okay. We can do that. We've centralized our reservations and scheduling operations, currently operating out of Long Island City. Next slide. We've introduced voucher service, allowing customers to use taxis and car services. It's increased from 2.7 when we started, currently at 10.7. And we're beginning to test and evaluate the introduction of a smart card to take advantage of the fare medium in the yellow cabs, and to expand this use of taxi and car service throughout the boroughs. We're also planning to demonstrate a direct operation of in-house paratransit at competitive cost structure to those of our private transportation firms currently within the system. Next slide. That brings us to customer service. As we can see, on the next slide, we have significant trips increasing, but our no-show rate has remained relatively steady in proportion to the scheduled trips. We've taken a number of actions, which I'll go into in a bit.
Can you remind us what the no-show rate is actually?
It's measuring customer no-shows that are reported when the trip was not completed. It's 4% of your scheduled trips.
The customer, if they cancel, if they don't show up,
If the driver arrives and within 5 minutes of waiting, the customer does not make the connection, it's reported as a customer no-show.
does that, if the driver arrives, say, 20 minutes later than the rider anticipated, is that considered a no-show?
There's a half-hour wait window. That's the time considered on time. Once you schedule your trip, there's a half-hour wait. If the driver arrives anytime within that half hour, they wait 5 minutes. If the customer is not there, it's reported as a no-show.
What about driver no-shows? Do we measure anywhere?
We have carrier no-shows. You'll see a decline in that statistic. It's coming up. Next slide. What actions have we taken to improve accessorized service? Next slide. One of our things that you heard were when a customer missed a connection, they were left stranded. They did not have an alternate means of travel. In the past, most of our vehicles were already in full service, and we had to rely on a service coming out of service, a pull-in, to address those customers that were stranded, especially wheelchair users. We focused on establishing a group whose primary purpose is to reduce that wait time, which a few years ago was 3 to 4 hours. We've reduced that now to under an hour, and with technology in AVLM, we're looking to reduce that within a half hour. Next slide, please. We also have our AVLM system, which will... Sure, okay. We have... Sure. Okay. When a customer calls and says they've missed their connection for whatever reasons, whether
Well-
they're saying,
Well, what used to happen, Tom, when somebody missed a year or two ago? What happened a year or two ago?
a few years ago, they would call the command center and say, where's my driver? Where's the vehicle? We'd say, well, the time point has passed, the driver was there, declared a no-show. The customer said, well, I was here, or whatever the reason. My doctor kept me later, or whatever the reason was, they needed a trip to return. It was usually their return trip home from their appointment. For wheelchair users, we were the only vehicle, lift-equipped vehicle, in a large number to address that. For some of our ambulatory customers, we were able to get them taxi or voucher authorizations for car service. The taxi was problematic. If they didn't have the cash outlay, then they were dependent on us to dispatch a vehicle. In looking at this situation a few years ago, we noticed that the vehicles were committed to service, 100%. There was no unassigned vehicles. There was no resource to address that, other than to wait for service to be completed throughout the day. So we took a number of steps, which you'll see, one being that in the command center there is one unit totally responsible that once they're informed of a misconnection, their prime purpose is to get that person a trip. Right, right. You'll see that in the next slide. Next slide. We also have our AVLM GPS system that we're rolling out. We're currently at 50% of the fleet. It gives the base dispatch in the command center a precise location of the vehicles. This will allow them to dispatch other vehicles in the vicinity to address recovery and alternate service. Next slide. Some of those actions that we've taken promote the integrity of the schedules. We found that carriers were manipulating the schedules, whether it because of resources within their own organization or just for economies. But that manipulation distorted the schedules, presented us with problems. So now they're prohibited from manual. They have a software feature that if they do want to make changes, the software will address the parameters and make an efficient adjustment. We've also responded to the complaint about traversing or zigzagging. We've introduced an enhancement that will keep the route, the integrity of the route, the trips in the general direction instead of going traversing back and forth. We've increased the number of floaters, routes with unassigned trips, from 8 to 21, with half being assigned to the command center. This way that problems can get immediately resolved. We've promoted the contact of customers through their cell phones. Drivers cannot leave and declare a no-show until they inform dispatch, and dispatch makes the calls to the home, cell phone if available, to make sure that we've made every attempt to get that customer. We've placed posters on the vehicles listing both driver and customer expectations. We've also increased the number of designated locations, AAR bus stops, so to speak, at major facilities, hospitals, malls, colleges, where we had a high incidence of misconnections. Next slide. We supplemented the contractually required training of the drivers. Every carrier has a training commitment. We've supplemented that with our own performance evaluation, focusing on customer sensitivity, proper securement, and safe driving. We've recently upgraded our automatic call distribution center, increased the T1 voice transmission lines to enhance the call center functionality. We are positioned to accept interactive voice response. This will allow customers direct access instead of going through agents. They'll be able to get information about their service, what's the vehicle number, the name of the carrier, and if it's on time. We'll install our AVLM system, as I mentioned. This provides real-time vehicle location, navigational assist to drivers, and two-way text messaging, and improved dispatch and route problem solving. And development out of the IVR we're looking at is to match the GPS with the IVR to give customers advance notice, possibly 15 minutes before the vehicle arrives. This will address the issue about waiting long periods for the vehicles.
How far away are we from implementing all of these improvements in all the vehicles?
The IVR is the significant improvement. We have two proposals before us. We're studying those right now. We're hoping to present them in April, and I'm told it's anywhere from 4 to 5 months to install. These are a mature product. This isn't a brand-new design IVR for paratransit.
Tom, has the switching carriers disrupted the AVL at all?
It has. It has. We were surprised to lose 3 of our long-term incumbent carriers. One had already begun installation. We had to pull back. So it has disrupted it. Now we have 6 new carriers that we have to plan for new installations. There are vehicles, but at their facilities they need certain equipment, software, hardware, and then the vehicles have the installation.
So if all the vehicles have the AVLM, who's doing the monitoring? Is it the carriers or is it us?
Both the command center and the base carriers. Not all the vehicles have them yet. Only 50% are equipped.
And what's the timeline for getting them all equipped?
We're taking a very aggressive approach now that we have a new contractors to have this installed by the end of this year.
And is there anything that you and the command center has that the agencies don't have, or vice versa?
In the initial design, the command center was the only one who had the CAD AVL to see where the vehicles were. We've changed that, reversed that decision, and given that out to the carriers so that their dispatch can also see where vehicles are and make some route problem-solving decisions. The improvements that we've achieved to date, we've increased on-time performance from 92 to 94.4. We've maintained zero denial, while annual trips have exceeded projections in each of the last 3 years. We've reduced customer complaints from 3.10 to 2.85 per 1,000 boardings. We've increased driver commendations from 6 to 15% between 2003 and 2008. And we've reduced carrier no-shows to less than 0.5% of the trips scheduled.
Excuse me, on those complaint statistics, are they complaints that are going to the carrier, or are they coming to us?
All comes through to our offices.
And how are people made aware of who they should call if there's a problem?
There's many bulletins, booklets, every package that we give new registrants.
Is it
has the
posted
phone
in the
numbers.
vehicle?
Yes, and there's handouts and there's numbers posted to call both New York City Transit and our call center for complaints.
Do we affirmatively reach out to our users other than at the point of initial registration, or if they're actually in a vehicle, who it is that they have to call? Because if somebody gets missed and doesn't get picked up, how do they know who they're supposed to call?
They know to call the 877 number for all their business because it has a menu and a prompt. They know that number 5 is for same-day service. They call them affectionately the number 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
And they call them with any concerns or issues. What's my driver number? What's the vehicle number? Or I have misconnection. Those are the agents I'm referring to that pass it off to the Route Zero crew. So
You're
it's all
sure
within
you
the
call
call
them
center.
you sure they're called that affectionately?
Yes, very affectionately. Our 2008 customer satisfaction survey is just about complete. We have numbers that are consistent with previous surveys. 85% were satisfied with their last day AR trip. 89% believed the trip took a reasonable amount of time. 84% said they were picked up within the standard for on-time pickup. 97% stated drivers operated the vehicle in a careful, safe manner. 89% stated the driver offered assistance. 96% think drivers are courteous. And 87% said the reservation staff are courteous and competent.
I got to tell you, those of us who were at the hearings, you sure wouldn't think those statistics actually had any were correct. It was amazing how many people came after us on this. And looking at this, my goodness, I mean, that's pretty good. We can do better, surely, but that's pretty good. We must have had. Anybody disagree that we heard so many people that
the
sounded
other
like
15% must have all been at the hearings.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Well,
right?
many are long-term customers. When there is a bad experience, that experience is internalized. It's when they were stranded, they were vulnerable. So every trip doesn't go off as planned.
But let me ask you this. Do you maintain a list of the carriers that have the most complaints? And, are those carriers periodically reviewed? And do you also do spot checks to see if some of the complaints were the drivers weren't dressed in a proper manner. Do you go out and inspect?
Yes. In fact,
unannounced.
Contract monitoring and compliance is a full-time job. We have superintendents at the carrier sites. We conduct pull-out surveys. We also do unannounced rides, audits of the classes to make sure that they are engaged in the class with the instructor. This is a constant activity. This is every month is a report card. With that report card is on all of the audits, all of the correspondence, the ratios. And I would say that one of the carriers we lost did have a high number, and they lost the contract because of part of that. Their performance wasn't acceptable.
How many carriers would you say you've let go due to large number of complaints or non-compliance with various things?
I can only think of two, one recently. Most will address the issue once we present them the numbers. We show them, and we we develop jointly programs to correct it, and it's generally corrected within a short order.
Tom, how often do the focus groups meet with our customers and go over all the issues that they have?
We meet every other month with the Paratransit Advisory Committee. This is a group of 15 who represent many disabled organizations. We meet every Tuesday, third Tuesday of the month, every other month, and we go over the performance and the issues that they're hearing from their constituents.
As we continue to talk about this, as I know we will, and I don't want to prolong today, I guess I just want to leave with two sort of thoughts for maybe next time or offline. One is the routing system. I'd love to actually understand how that works, and if it, because you do, like you said, you do hear horror stories of it taking 3 hours to get from point A to point B, and doing an all city-wide tour to get from, say, Manhattan to the Bronx. You go through Brooklyn, which doesn't really work. So I would like to hear that. And also, and we've talked about this before, I want to add a new wrinkle to it. In terms of bringing in revenue, reducing expenditures, we need to do more with taxis. I've said that over and over again. I know you're working there. I think we should be more aggressive. But maybe this is just a thought for a second question. A lot of what you said for individuals going to doctor's appointments, and a big portion of your clientele make less than $35,000. For Medicaid services, I know a lot of the ambulettes are Medicaid. Are people using this service rather than the ambulette, and do we have any way to get after Medicaid money?
This was looked at a few years ago. We see that as another population. It's not our population that have Medicaid supplement.
Right, but I know that's not our targets. It shouldn't be our population, but
right.
Is in fact people choosing this service? Maybe it's better than the ambulance that they get to utilize this service, and we don't know about because it's only $2 out of that pocket. When in fact we should be going after Medicaid to get reimbursed for the cost of the service.
We can discuss that because there's implications about the Medicaid bringing in a whole new demand for our service.
I'm not saying demand. Maybe we should be going after Medicaid. I'm not saying we should open up to Medicaid. I'm actually saying maybe we should have been billing Medicaid or going after them.
Well, that's my concern, though. If we do, that may come with it. That's my concern.
Mark?
I'm sorry to have been late. Maybe you already addressed this, and I'm not really asking you to address it now, but I'd like to hear about it. The whole question of who's eligible for this service and how you determine who's eligible for this service, I would love to have an opportunity to go into with you.
I think you need to come back.
Well, two things. I think it would be great if we had you come back at regular intervals, but if there are interested committee members who would like to delve into these matters more, I'd like to form a working group on paratransit of this committee so we can spend some quality time with you getting to understand this a lot better, because clearly there were concerns. We seem by the statistics to be doing one heck of a job, but we need to make sure we're meeting all of the challenges, and there certainly are many of them. Any other questions?
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Crime, there were 219 felonies in January 2009, up by 12 or 5.8% from January 2008. Robberies decreased by 3 or 4.1%. Safety, we continue to see mostly favorable safety trends. The subway customer accident rate was down 16.5% for the month of November and down 5.2% for the last 12 months. Subway fires were up 23.1% in December, but for the full year, fires were down 13.3%. In addition, all fires during December were classified as low or average severity. The bus customer accident rate was down 2.9% for the month of November, although the 12-month average rate was up 1%. And the employee lost time accident rate for the year 2008 was down 10.7% from 2007, despite a bad month in December. Preliminary financial results show that farebox revenue in 2008 was $3.03 billion, which was less than 0.1% above the final estimate. The average non-student fare in 2008 was $1.334. In constant 1996 dollars, the average 2008 fare was 94 cents. For the year 2008, total expenses before depreciation, OPEB, and environmental remediation were under the final estimate by $2.1 million, a variance of less than 0.1%. Section 4 of the agenda includes a preliminary review of the 2008 financial results for both NYCT and Staten Island Railroad. A complete analysis of results would be part of the April agenda as per the committee work plan. Ridership, total 2008 ridership was 2.38 billion, the highest annual ridership since 1965, and up by 3.1% from 2007. Subway ridership in 2008 was 1.62 billion, its highest level since 1950. Bus ridership was 747 million in 2008, showing a moderate increase of 1.2% from 2007, and paratransit ridership increased by 23.4% for the year. Preliminary January financial results. So we've also had an early look at financial results for January 2009. Farebox revenue was under budget by 3.1 million, or 1.3%. Even though the budget assumed a decrease in ridership relative to 2008 due to declining employment, ridership was still below budget. Preliminary operating expenses for January were over budget by 1 million, or 0.2%. The primary cause was an underrun in reimbursable payroll, which resulted in an overrun in non-reimbursable payroll and a shortfall in overhead credits. This was primarily due to the necessity to cancel weekend general orders during the month due to bad weather. Last month I mentioned my concern that bad weather in January also might make it difficult to keep within our overtime budget, but as it turns out, we only overran by 160,000, or 0.8% for the month. Capital program for the year, Transit committed $2.4 billion to award in design starts. The commitment level represents 63% of the full-year plan. The bulk of the shortfall was due to delays in awarding 3 large construction projects: rehabilitation of the Culver Viaduct, CBTC on the Flushing Line, and 5 station rehabs on the Pelham Line. Now, in fact, the delay of the Culver Viaduct, as I will report to you in a minute, may have been a very fortunate turn of circumstances. That completes my operating report.
Go back to January again. What did I'm just trying to sort out? That's a big deal that we were below our already lower budget.
On the revenue side, this is in January for the first time. As we had gone through the previous through 2008, every month we had more revenue than we'd had the previous month, and more ridership the previous year. For January 2009, for the first time, we were under January 2008, and we were also slightly under the revenue budget. So that is significant.
That's a big deal, guys. That's a big deal.
Yes, Mark.
I Howard, what's the matter with the escalators? Your escalator reliability starts beginning to look like the Dow Jones averages. It was all right until, last year, but now it's really heading toward the bottom.
Are you looking at the, actually, it doesn't make any difference, but we have corrected numbers. We're also handed out. We're going to cover that in just a minute.
Okay.
Yes. On page 45, there's a couple of things. The additional pension expenses, I thought the lump sum provisions were taken care of in a Gadsby account. And I know it's not here, and I know you may not have any knowledge of that. But there was money set aside previously.
Is that the $43 million?
I believe so. So if you could just get an answer on that. I'll leave the fuel question till the procurements. But where this says other cost overrun in the non-labor paragraph, the fourth line in, other cost overrun, electric charges, MetroCard fees, and reclassification of some expenses. Could we see a list of those?
Sure.
Thank you.
We can do that.
Howard, I noticed in the accounts receivable, I think we had $27 million that's over 1 year due. It's on page 65. About $13 million of it is from the city, but almost $12 million of it is from other. Any sense of who owes us?
No, I don't know that, but we will get that information to you.
Any other additional questions? Just on the operations report. There's a lot of statistics in here and a lot of new ones. I just want to make sure everyone's comfortable with the presentment of them. Okay.
The procurement agenda this month includes 26 actions in the book, totaling $213.5 million in expenditures. $178.8 million of that 213 is award of the Culver Line Viaduct rehab. I call to the committee's attention the fact that the award is $62.5 million under, 26% under the engineer's estimate. So this is one of the more encouraging things we've had turn up in procurement in quite some while. I ask for your approval of these actions.
I have a motion, and then we'll open it up to questions. Okay. Questions?
Yes, I'm using this, Carl, because mine puts out. What kind of service impacts is the Culver Viaduct reconstruction going to entail? Any ideas yet?
Yeah, Peter?
Hello. The first impact, which we anticipate in the fall, will be the extension of the G train to Church Avenue to allow work on the middle tracks for the multi-year part of this contract. We've been working very closely with the designers over time to minimize the other impacts. We will be using the express tracks while local tracks are rebuilt, which will result in some stations being bypassed and shuttle trains to supplement service at times, but we work to minimize that. It will play out over, I think it's a four-year contract. So we'll be back several times as the service changes to inform the board on what the outlook is.
Would there be a time when you'd be bypassing both Smith 9th Street and 4th Avenue?
Like I said, we'll be back with the detailed plans. I'm not going to say that there's never, certainly on some weekends, we would anticipate that. But there are various issues with serving Smith 9th Street and what service can provide that I prefer to just come back with a formal presentation on that.
Stanley, I thought you were pulling our leg when I saw the first procurement was from NICE Systems, followed by Albatross North America. But I want to point out a couple of good things about a few of these procurements. One of them, with Clean Venture, was a multi-agency contract where we worked with MTA Bus Company and Long Island Bus on that procurement, and another one where we bypassed a B vendor who was lower priced and took someone who actually has proven better service patterns with us.
We've been doing that for several years, and that's a very effective message to send to our suppliers for maintenance equipment.
Amen. Any other questions? Jeff?
We're doing all the procurements.
Questions on
Yeah.
all the procurements?
The new flyer for the 60-foot articulated buses. So as I sort of read through the staff summary, it says we should have done this testing prior to the negotiations, and somewhere buried here it sort of seems we're not actually going to go forward with the purchase of the new Arctic buses. Is that true? Is that new? I thought we actually changed stuff around the last capital plan to buy these buses. Maybe not.
That's correct. We are badly in need of articulated buses. At the point in time we were negotiating with them through the spring of 2008, we were trying to speed up that procurement as quickly as possible, and we wanted to ensure that the platform that they were going to deliver for that low-floor articulated bus met our structural standards. So we proceeded to authorize them to do the finite element modeling and the strain gauge testing of that platform that they were going to sell to us. Ultimately, however, they came in with pricing for the bus itself that was just unacceptable, and they also had taken numerous exceptions to our terms and conditions that we also found unacceptable.
Right.
So we did not conclude negotiations with them. We are presently actually negotiating for a low-floor articulated bus with Volvo, and intend to bring an award to the board
And
shortly.
what's the timing on accepting these? Because if I recall, this committee made a big, we had a long discussion about swapping out some other buses for these long Arctic buses, and I'm surprised to hear that we did that without having, and I thought we did that knowing that we had a contract that we wanted to access right away, and now all of a sudden that contract is not, we apparently have made a decision not to go forward with it. I'm not questioning our ability not to go forward with that. I guess the timing of it is sort of odd since we...
What really was the key determining factor, Jeff, was that a New Flyer told us that they were not going to give us the standard 12-year structural warranty.
Yeah, we currently, yes, that's true. We currently have a Volvo bus. Volvo's the parent company. Nova's the actual bus. It's up on the BX12 local right now. It's got 3 doors. We had it in the city on the M15, and that bus already went through the structural testing, and they are agreeing to our 12-year, which New Flyer would not agree to unless we added hundreds of thousands of dollars onto our terms and conditions.
So
Joe,
when
wasn't that the bus that you brought over to show us? Isn't that the Volvo we all...
No, that was the bus we saw in the newspaper the other day.
No, there was an Arctic bus.
There was an Arctic bus. That was Mercedes Citaro. The Volvo bus will actually, once we go through negotiations and everything, they have a plant in Plattsburgh, New York, to build the Nova bus. So that's great for all of us here.
How many buses were we going to get at a New Flyer that we're no longer getting, at least this year, or maybe in the short time period?
I don't think we were going to get any buses this year at a New Flyer, Stanley, were we? Do you know? I don't know if we
because the negotiations didn't succeed.
They didn't,
we're not going to buy
and
any buses.
I don't think we were on their books. Where they could deliver.
What Jeff is asking is what the fleet plan called for in terms of Arctics for this year.
For I believe it was 80 buses. Was it 80 buses?
I'm going to have to check. I don't remember the original number.
But we're looking at 90 buses to start delivery sometime in 2010. That's what we're looking to purchase.
The way the big automotive and bus manufacturers are going, by the time you fulfill this contract, they're all liable to be owned by the same person anyway.
What's going on with the Mercedes bus, Joe?
Mercedes we had down here, the bus that we drove around in the city, we're trying to entice them to build it in Oriskany, New York. We've had several discussions with them, and to put it on another assembly line for us. We've showed interest, and now the ball is basically back in their court, and we're waiting for them to come forward on it. We need articulated buses. There's no doubt about it. So
And that was
hopefully
really
if the
a much
procurement...
better, and that was a much better bus. I mean, that was really quite extraordinary compared to ones we use now.
It is. Also, the Volvo bus is a distinct improvement,
Yeah.
particularly the 3 doors.
Where did Mercedes make its prototype, do you know?
Its prototype was made in Europe. The one that we had over here was made in Europe. So we're trying to get them to build the bus over in the United States, particularly in New York. And they do have, Daimler Chrysler does own, it's also the parent company of Orion Bus, the way Volvo is the parent company of Nova. So Orion Bus is manufactured in upstate New York. So they're looking at possibly doing that in upstate New York.
And it would, obviously, it would be fantastic to have 2 companies that make articulated buses in New York State who would provide competition.
Is Ferrari interested in this?
Are there any more questions or comments, comedic or otherwise, on the procurement package? One last one, Mark. Jeff.
On the fuel contract, that's a ratification. Why is it a ratification? This is something we knew we were taking testing of, and then on a more substantive level, did it pass the test? Is there anything popped up that we're going to, impact our ability to do a longer-term contract come January?
It's a ratification because once we took the bids, we awarded them immediately because we wanted to maximize taking advantage of the winter period. And thus far, of course, Joe can chime in, but everything I've heard is that there haven't been any problems with the fuel.
Yeah,
that's being
the
delivered.
best time to test fuel in a bus is in the cold winter months. It's been extremely cold, which is great. All these buses are outside, and so far, we've had no problems up to now, which is great.
Yes.
So my question had more to do with this fuel and any other fuel. Where are we relative to the crazy price spikes that we've seen? Do we lock in at the top? Do we lock in halfway up, halfway down? Are we locked in at all?
On the way our fuel contract works is the same as prior. We're not locked in to any base fuel price. The fuel price is based on a Platts index that floats. What's locked in is a differential above that base fuel price, which is the price that the supplier proposes to cover their effort, their profit, and so on and so forth, their administrative costs.
The last item in your package is a up-to-date summary of where we are with respect to fuel savings and also the cost of the hedge.
Thank you.
And you should just note that the differential price in the 2 bids that we took for this pilot test are significantly lower than what we're paying for our ULSK fuel under the main contract that we have. And so we will be issuing an RFP shortly to do a next contract and are looking forward to pricing that's much better than what we're paying right now.
Thank you.
And several bidders, we hope. Any other questions or comments? We have a vote to move the package? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
Service changes. Section 6 of the agenda prevents for information subway service changes proposed to take effect in June. Some of these were included in the service rationalization package for December implementation. We are bringing these to the committee's intention at this point in time because we would like to implement them with the June pick. Peter Caffiero, who is the head of operations planning, is going to discuss this item.
Hello. As it's detailed in the agenda, we are proposing to go to 10-minute headways on the weekends on the B division. Right now, many of our routes, our service guidelines call for a minimum of 10-minute headways. Many of the routes are at 8 minutes, and some of the lighter ridership routes are at 10 minutes officially. But because of the capital construction that occurs throughout the system on almost every weekend, we don't run that service. We have to thin out the number of trains to fit in the restricted areas as we take tracks out of service and put them and rebuild the system. And this situation has continued to occur over the last few years. In 2003, we formalized that on the A division, on the numbered routes, and limited service frequencies to what we actually could reasonably run on most weekends, which results in some standees on trains on the A division where our guidelines would call for a seated load. We're proposing to do that the same on the B division, essentially to formalize what occurs almost every weekend. Currently, on those weekends, we maintain 8 minutes on some of the heaviest routes, and the other routes go to 12-minute frequencies. But we think that with a 10-minute frequency, it'll make the merging of routes easier. It'll be more equitable and result in some routes that currently are often not running at all, such as the C train, increase our ability to be able to maintain that service. So that's the intent to do that. We will not be changing service on the L train, where it currently operates every 5 to 6 minutes, but that, being a standalone route, doesn't have this issue. And on the E route, which is our heaviest route on weekends, other than the L, because the going to a strict 10-minute service would result in a several-hour period during the peak of significant crowding, we've added back service on the E, so we would maintain better than 10-minute service as to the extent we can with the other construction work going on during those rush hour periods on the weekends.
Is there a presentation?
He's going to do a presentation later.
Later on.
Not on this.
Gotcha. Okay. Andrew.
Yeah. I'm just really very unhappy with this proposal for a lot of reasons. As Howard mentioned, it is part of the budget cuts that if the state legislature doesn't act, we will have to put into place unless some of it can be avoided by other means. And to go ahead and do it now, to me, it seems undermines our ability to convince the legislature that they need to act. This is a major, 8 to 10 minutes is a major service cut for folks. As Peter mentioned, these things don't run like clockwork on weekends. If you're starting with an even worse threshold, 10 minutes as opposed to 8 minutes, you might be waiting 12 or 13 minutes if something untoward happens with one of these construction projects. I think this is a terrible, terrible move. I mean, it may be great from a railroading point of view, and it may allow trains to mesh evenly, but it's a cut in service to customers. And it's a budgetary cut that actually has not taken place yet. Plus, even though the C train frequently doesn't run, it is scheduled to run on weekends, and I'm hopeful that that same GO is not going to run 52 weekends of a year, that we might actually get the ability for the A to run express sometimes and the C to be where it is. And, it's not mentioned in this package at all. And it does run occasionally. Sometimes the GOs don't happen. What happens to the C? Is it going to be at the 10-minute frequency? I assume that's the idea for this, so that it would get an actual increase in service from 12 to 10. But this is just terrible. I mean, and how long is this for? Is this off into the future ad infinitum? I mean, how long is this proposal? We need to know a lot of these things.
Well, you're correct on the C train and the impact it would have on that. What we're finding the last number of years is most weekends of the year we have track work, and it's various projects. It could be anywhere along the route, wherever we have to go from a 4-track line to a 2-track, even in one direction for a brief interval, brief point between two stations, still restricts the overall service we can run on the line. In the case of the A and C that you're familiar with, whenever the F runs on the A line or the A runs on the F line, or a number of other variations, that's where we trip over our number of trains per hour that we can accommodate through the tunnels and past the work zones, and merging in and diverging. And so the goal of this service change would be to, by reducing the overall number of trains scheduled, allow that to happen easier and more regularly. And our goal, my goal certainly, is to have the C operate, for example. And there are other routes in the system that get impacted significantly also, to have those operate on a more regular basis and a more consistent basis. There are some major routes like the F train, which is a fairly significant route that often runs on a 12-minute frequency because the E route is being heavier, gets the 8-minute service right now. So this would equalize that out as well.
The A division line, are they running at 10-minute intervals for most A division trains?
They actually run, the A division's historically and continues to be heavier in use, and they actually run 8 minutes on the heaviest routes and 12 minutes on the lighter routes, which is in some ways the way we've been running the B division, but to go to a straight 10-minute there would really impact severely the heaviest of the A division routes. And the guidelines, right, the guidelines call for, we should be probably running a 5 or 6 minute service on most of those routes. Also on the A division you have a number of corridors where you have combined service, so the 2 and 3 are each scheduled on a 12 now, but combined are for most of the corridor on a 6-minute headway.
Do we know how long these GOs are scheduled? I mean, how long is this proposal for? The work that you're doing that's causing the F to take over the A and eliminating the C, when is that ever going to be done, for instance? And people are asking this about other ones. It's a joke on the weekends. Nobody knows how to get anywhere. I mean, we ought to have a special brochure issued on weekends. I mean, the New Yorkers don't even know, much less tourists.
Well, again, our goal is to try to make it a little more consistent, but the work is going to, it varies throughout the system, will continue indefinitely. We have a major signal contracts coming up in Queens that will affect the E and the F and the R on weekends. We have station rehabilitations, the Culver project that we just talked about will affect the F train, and so there are a number of projects out there, and a lot of the signal projects have the biggest impact on service.
When is the pick you said is when, June?
The pick, yes, we're talking about this would be implemented. The June pick is implemented in the month of June. It's actually being the pick is starts when, Peter?
We're about to start picking on it, but it would be implemented in the middle of June.
And how does that differ? By the way, this might be the right thing to do. I don't want to talk about substance, about whether this is the right cut or not the right cut. I guess my question really is, why are we doing this now? Why is this not? Is this something that should happen ahead of the other service cuts? Getting back to sort of Andrew's point, are we moving forward on a budget piece, which might be okay? I just think we should talk about it early on something. We did say we were going to wait for Albany to act. We're acting now. What's the timing, and why do we need to act now, and why not wait?
This comes under the category which we've been asked a couple of times by the committee.
The guidelines, I understand. We don't need us to pass anything.
And which things would you do, whether the service rationalization package.
This might be exactly the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, whether the package went in or not. And, I mean, we could have left it out of the rationalization package and just brought it, maybe that's what we should have done, just brought it forward at this point in time as a normal basic, as a normal service adjustment. But that's essentially what it comes down to. Because of the timing of the package, there is no way that that's why all the subway cuts are scheduled to go in with the December pick that are in the service rationalization package. It takes us, we're trying to improve this, and we have a task force working on it, but it takes us a much longer time to do a subway pick than it does a bus pick. It is about a 5-month process, basically.
So then, let me suggest then, if we are moving forward with this, that this is more than just a warning shot. We have to move forward. We're making these cuts, and you're making changes to service because it's the right thing to do and the right thing we have to do. And, you know, there's more to come if, in fact, nothing comes from Albany. Is that fair to say?
I mean, that's not what I'm hearing. And, you know, what I'm hearing is that, in fact, this is a way of regularizing and making more predictable the service that we're currently providing, recognizing the circumstance of the amount of disruption caused by the track and signal improvement projects that are ongoing. I'm not hearing that this is, in fact, a part of an overall service contraction that we would perhaps be obliged to implement depending on funding issues.
No, that is correct. And what I was trying to say is this is something that we would have done anyway, and we would have not caused this confusion if we hadn't put it in the service rationalization package as well.
Alan?
Yeah, were the cost implications of this factored into our planning up until this point, or does this give us additional play in the to whatever extent?
No, it's about a $4.5 million savings. It was in the service proposal, so it's not being double counted anywhere. This was something that was identified as we were looking for cost savings, so that's how it sort of ended up in the package. But as we developed it, we realized it was something that made sense to do in any case, because we have a situation where essentially we're spending money and not providing the service in a reasonable and equitable manner, and this made sense to do it.
And just as two quick follow-ups, Andrew had asked, how long is this anticipated for, the track programs?
Yeah, and I think the real answer to that is that this is in effect permanent until the system returns to a state of good repair, which at the current level of capital funding is many years off.
And the final follow-up in terms of communicating to the riders, aside and apart from whatever we do down in the system itself, are we being vigilant in putting this out on the web or through whatever services so that people have a sense of what the weekend situation is?
Yeah, we try very hard, and I ride the service, particularly the A, the C, and the E on the weekends. Frequently, we put up posters in the stations, and we put it on the webs, and we don't always get it right. I walked into 50th Street station about 3 weeks ago, and it said no A service at this station, and 2 minutes later an A train showed up on the platform. It is something that Lee has made informing people of diversions. It's something that Lee has made a major issue out of, and we try very hard. There are obviously, from personal experience and from complaints, it is an area in which we have not achieved the desired goal. What operations planning is saying, though, is that the whole purpose of this is not to increase loading. It's not to save the $4.5 million. It is to make it more predictable as to what we are going to do on the weekends. So when you go to 50th Street, you will know. This weekend at 50th Street, for example, you have the A running local. You don't go down and get on the E, and you're trying to get to the World Trade Center, and you have to get off at West 4th Street because the E is following the F's route into Broadway, Lafayette, and to Brooklyn, 2nd Avenue in Brooklyn. So it is an attempt simply to make it more predictable and deal with the fact that we have to be out there every weekend that we have decent weather, and doing not just the major signal projects and the track projects, but also doing routine track replacement and routine heavy maintenance.
Does this also mean then that on the Lefferts Boulevard branch of the A and the Rockaway branch of the A, they get service every 20 minutes?
Yeah, it would be split evenly. But again, it's
a major cut.
Even if we get the financing package that we're hoping for from Albany, it's going to require a significant increase in taxes and costs to the general public in our region. They are, in general, being faced with the likelihood of increased taxes not only for this purpose, but for state services and city services, and the fact of reductions in services that can be expected at all of those levels. The idea that somehow or other the MTA and every moment of its train schedule is sacred and shouldn't be adjusted to be as productive and efficient as possible in these circumstances, I don't think is a place we want to go. And if, in fact, in our operating judgment, this is a rationalization and improvement in overall service and the predictability of service and our ability to actually manage the service that we provide, it seems to me that we would be seriously wrong not to pursue this, even though there may be instances where passengers will be obliged to wait a few minutes longer for a train.
I think so much of it is in how we get the message out clearly so that people understand what service is going to be like on weekends on all of these lines. It really is quite a jumble to sort out, but the goal is to make sure that the system gets better. And I'm not sure that there's a way to get track work done at any other time than on weekends when there are fewer people traveling. Still a lot, but fewer people traveling. So we're between a rock and a hard place, and I think we just have to redouble our efforts at clarity for the folks that are using the system throughout the weekends. Yes, Jim?
Well, I certainly agree with Commissioner Page, but I'm getting back to Andrew's position, and I don't think it's a matter of what's right or wrong. I think the concern that I have is that this was presented to the public as part of a budget package that would be avoided if we got the funding we need. And now we're going back and saying, well, we're going to do it anyway. And I think that's really the concern that I have, not so much the concern that it's the right thing to do, but how it was proposed and how it was sent to as part of the budget as something that could be avoided should we get enough funding.
I don't disagree. I think we should have been more thoughtful in the way this got rolled out. But the facts are the facts. The track work has to get done. The schedule is going to be impacted. And if it means that you leave your train on a platform to connect to another one and that train is actually sitting there waiting for the connection, that certainly makes me happy when that happens. Any other additional comments? Let's keep moving.
Reports and presentations. Section 7 of this month's agenda begins with our regular status report on the EFC program. The next two reports, one for New York City Transit, one for SIR, are presented in accordance with the MTA's annual budget procedures. These reports present the 2008 final estimate, the 2009 adopted budget, and the February financial plan for the 2009 to 2012 period. These are all consistent with the financial plan presented in November and approved by the board in December. In this presentation, elements that were carried below the line in November, such as the 2009 PEGs and other gap closing actions, are now included in the budget baseline. Continuing now to Section 8, we have two quarterly reports, one for the Transit Adjudication Bureau, the other covering elevator and escalator performance. We had several mistakes in the E&E report, and you've been provided with corrected copy. 2008 did not show as much progress as we had expected. Overall, there was a slight improvement in elevator availability from 2007 to 2008, and a slight decline in escalator availability. However, based on the daily reports I received, 2009 is off to a better start. There are days when, except for the long-term escalator problem that we have at Main Street on the number 7 line, the Fujitec warranty repairs at Herald Square, and the programmed escalator rehabs, where we take out an escalator out of service and rehabilitate it over a period of several months, we have had only a very few elevators and escalators down. And I believe that our elevator and escalator initiatives are finally beginning to gain a little bit of traction, and we expect significant improvements this year. Our proposal to decentralize the maintenance of the elevators and escalators into smaller geographic areas, the preparations to do that are underway. The new computerized maintenance management system is now being used in parallel with the manual system, and we're about to discontinue the manual system. We now have LiftNet installed in all revenue machines. This is 173 revenue escalators, 173 revenue elevators, and 169 escalators. For all of those machines, all but 9 are working, and we have communications problems with those 9 that we're in the process of straightening out. But this means that the centralized maintenance operation now has up-to-date or immediate information as to when there is a malfunction. And then finally on training, we're working with the APTA. The lack of elevator and escalator training is pretty widespread throughout the industry. We now have 3 courses that are developed and that we're about to begin teaching. One on traction elevators, one on hydraulic elevators, and one on doors, and they are going to continue with developing a complete curriculum. I believe I might have some questions on the elevator and escalators.
Why don't we pause for questions before we go on to the final piece of this? Mark?
Well, you certainly answered my questions about why you look like the Dow Jones average. You don't look completely like the Dow Jones average, and I think that you've answered my questions now.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Is there a quick update on the Fujitec warranty problem?
The quick update is that I'm really concerned with respect to how we write our contracts with respect to warranty repairs. And if we have an escalator problem that is out of warranty, then we get out there and we fix it, get the parts and fix it as quickly as possible. We have very little leverage in our current contracts to force any of the contractors to respond as quickly as we respond in-house. The Fujitec situation is further complicated by the fact that they have now gone out of the escalator business. So nobody said it was going to be easy. The last report is the semi-annual report on service quality indicators. The first of these is the weight assessment indicator for buses. The remainder are the passenger environment survey indicators, or PES for short. These indicators, this is something that we started back in the early 80s to give some view of what passengers see in the various services. These are reported to the operating divisions on a monthly basis. So they get the writer report card on an annual basis that tells them what the passengers actually think, but on an interim monthly basis, they see how they're doing on these key indicators. I would now like Peter Caffiero, who is Chief of Operations Planning, will give you a very brief presentation on the PES for this quarter.
Okay, thank you. As President Roberts mentioned, this began in 1983, and actually I believe, President Roberts, you were responsible for instituting it when you were here in that time. It's the most extensive indicator series of any transit property in the United States. If you can, next slide now. We collect currently 87 indicators in 4 areas: subways, on the cars, in the stations, on local buses, and on express buses. And we've added Staten Island Railway with this report. And we look at cleanliness and appearance, whether the equipment's functioning, customer information, and some operations data. It's collected by operations planning surveyors, so it's independent of the operating departments. We go out weekly throughout the system, and we're basically trying to look at the system from a customer perspective. In stations, we look at 5 different areas depending on each station: stairs, mezzanines, platforms, passageways, and track bed, which we look at separately because the issues of cleaning the track bed are more difficult and part of a different department than stations. We also get on not every bus, but we do a statistical sampling of buses in service and in subway cars as well, in service and at the terminals. Next slide. These photos are actually from our training that we give to our employees before we send them out. Obviously, many of these can be subjective, so we want to make sure that we're as consistent as possible. Most of the cleaning standards are measured either none, light, moderate, or heavy. Generally, we tend to look at none and light as a passing score. So as you can see, the difference between light and moderate and heavy is something we want to make clear. Also, any kind of bottles or spilled liquids automatically fail an element because our feeling was that was a potential safety issue. Here's an example from the entire report's in the back of the package. As President Roberts mentioned, we give the data as we collect it now monthly back to the operating department so they can take corrective action. In the past, it was more like every 6 months we'd hit them with this report card. Now we give monthly feedback. One indicator that we had collected, which is weight assessment on the subways in the last couple months, has graduated to a monthly reporting that we report now separately. This shows litter conditions in subway cars just as an example. We have been showing some improvement as we go through this from year to year and 6 month to 6 month period. We also, as I mentioned before, showed at terminals where our car cleaners are based and where one would expect to have a very high level of cleanliness versus in service where customers unfortunately are dropping litter and so the conditions get worse as it goes through the system. In this report, we have of the 87 indicators, 20 improved, some of them significantly compared to the second half of 2007. 2 indicators declined, 46 were not changed, and 19 were the new Staten Island indicators that we're reporting for the first time. Of the 2 that declined, I just wanted to mention the climate control in buses issue. We've been measuring climate control very intensively over the summer as part of President Roberts' initiatives in that regard, and in fact the performance has been getting better. What was highlighted here is the fact that this is a random selection of days during the year, and we actually had a lot more very hot days this 6 month period compared to 2007. So even though it looks like it got worse, the performance on, if you normalize for the temperature, which is something we'll try to build in next year into this measure, it actually did get better. So in summary, the PES is something that provides us with some management tools to improve quality of service, and it's something that we report every 6 months publicly. It is used by a number of some of the advocate groups in data where they also look at how our system is doing, so it's used by others.
Thank you. I know, and I'm not trying to be a cheerleader here, I think that the stations are looking a lot cleaner, and the cars as well. So whatever we're doing, we're on the right track. So commend all of you. Any other questions, Andrew?
Yeah, there's one indicator on here that just flew off the page at me, and that was buses with correct front signs. That's an epidemic of incorrect signs. When we did our bus survey, something like 20% of the buses had, and that was a snapshot in time, but every day I'm seeing a bus with the incorrect front sign on it. So I've spoken to Joe about it, and he sent a thing out to the drivers to please push the button when you reach the end of the line. They always have, well, not always, but they frequently have the opposite destination, which of course, as you know, affects transfer. So that's a very important thing.
No, there is absolutely no excuse for that. In the early 80s, something like 70% of the destination signs didn't work. But we are now at a point in time in which all the destination signs work, and the bus should not go out of the depot if the destination sign doesn't work.
I believe the destination sign does work, except that what you're seeing is when the driver gets around to the UN, he doesn't change the sign. He's not readjusting the sign. That's all the ones you've shown me.
If there are no further questions on transit, we will close transit and move on to bus.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Frasca, members of the Bus Committee. I would ask that the members of the committee approve the minutes of the previous meeting held January 26.
Is there a motion?
There were no changes to the work plan next month. Next is the operation performance summary. Overall bus performance continued to be solid in December. AM weekday pull-out performance was 99.92 during the month. PM was 99.94. The 12-month average for AM pullouts was 99.81. This exceeded the 2008 goal of 99.52. Completed trips averaged 99.54 in December and 99.33 for over the last 12 months. MDBF was 44.18 in December, which was down 8% from December 2007. However, the 12-month MDBF for 2008 improved 37.5% over 2007 and was 23% better than our goal. Safety results indicated a slight decrease in the performance for the month of December, but still reflected overall improvement in 2008 compared to 2007. The 12-month average rate for bus collision and customer accidents was 5.98 per 100,000 miles, which was 6.2% better than 2007. The 12-month average rate for employee lost times accidents was also 7.7% better than 2007. Total ridership for the month of December was 10.7% over 2007. For calendar year 2008, total ridership was up 10.3%, or 11 million more riders as compared to 2007. Average weekday ridership in December was up 5.9% over 2007, and average weekend ridership was up 1.8% over the same period. For calendar year 2008, average weekday ridership rose 10.2% over 2007, and average weekend ridership rose 10.9%. The next section of our committee report covers our financial statement. Financial results show that the 2008 farebox revenue was better by $1.5 million, or 1% against the final estimate. And 2008 non-reimbursable expenses before non-cash adjustments were $4.1 million better than the final estimate. With respect to action items and procurements, we have no action items this month, but we have one competitive procurement item for the committee's approval. The competitive procurement item is awarded miscellaneous service contracts to Iron Mountain Records Management for off-site record storage and retention for all MTA bus depots, and an estimate of $60,385, and it's the same procurement that currently Metro North and Bridges and Tunnels and Long Island Bus and Long Island Railroad use.
We're writing a Metro North contract,
Right.
actually, on this. Right. Any discussion? Oh, well, motion made. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you.
On your statistics, all of your statistics for December were uniformly good, which shows you, I guess, the benefits of having virtually an unlimited budget.
You could, okay.
I would disagree.
Yeah, Ed would disagree. The next topic is an information item for this committee regarding a service change. This change will revise the Q67 westbound travel path in Maspeth between 69th Street and Hamilton Place to a more direct path that follows the Borden Avenue, Queens, Midtown Express Service Road of the LIE. Basically, it mirrors the eastbound path used by the Q67 currently. And this change is expected to decrease the operating costs by approximately $42,000.
Any comments on this service change? Okay.
The final agenda item also presented for the committee's information is the MTA Bus Company's 2008 final estimate and 2009 adopted budget and financial plan for 2009 through 2012. The attached plan includes all administrative savings, PEG items, and alternative actions that may be necessary to achieve the balanced budget. This concludes my remarks for the Bus Committee.
Any questions on any items? Motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you very much. See you next month.